All right, I'd like to welcome everybody to Liberal Kalkaska Substance Free Coalition's Coffee with the Coalition. It is an informal forum to discuss certain subjects that have to do with substance use disorder in and around Kalkaska County. And first of all, I'd like everybody to introduce yourself and what services you provide to Kalkaska County, if any. And we will go with, okay, Lisa.
Good morning. My name is Lisa Anderson. I work for the Kalkaska County Commission on Aging as their community support specialist.
Okay, let's see, Eric.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Eric, and Tim invited me today just to observe. I'm a behavioral health consultant with the Michigan Opioid Collaborative, and I serve southeastern Michigan, actually.
Okay, Tim.
Hi, excuse me. I'm Tim Hudson. I'm a behavioral health consultant with Michigan Opioid Collaborative, which is a grant-funded program with Michigan Medicine. I cover the northern 21 counties. Our focus includes increasing awareness regarding all substance use disorders, specifically, or most importantly, I should say, opioid use disorder, and looking to increase the availability of medications for opioid use disorder. We also focus on outreach to all substance use disorder treatment centers to partner with them to bring awareness surrounding stigma and all treatment options and increasing awareness of the prevalence of substance use disorder in our communities. We also provide consultations for same-day patient consultations for providers for any patients who have a substance use disorder and or Hep C.
Right. So Kim.
Hello, sorry, I had to unmute myself. Hey, Tim, are those appointments in person or are they online?
So what the process works is that if a provider has a patient, they don't have to be there that day. Oftentimes, it's usually a provider calls and says, hey, I have this patient who's going to be here next week or later this week. They tell us kind of the situation, what the patient's background is, what type of questions they have. If it's something I can answer, I do that there. If it's something we feel it's more appropriate for us to get one of the addiction physicians from U of M on the line, we coordinate that, and it's all done same day, Monday through Friday. We do have the ability to do via Zoom if necessary. There's just a few extra steps. That's pretty rare that happens. It's usually just over the phone with the provider.
That's pretty awesome. Good to know. Thank you so much for explaining that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right,
My name is Kim Johnson, and I am a sexual health ambassador with Planned Parenthood, a peer recovery coach, and I work with Harm Reduction Michigan. And we actually have a store or a place in Kalkaska. So just trying to get that word out as well.
Yeah. All right, thanks, Kim. Molly.
Hi, everybody. My name is Molly Harvey. I am a prevention specialist with Up North Prevention Catholic Human Services. I focus in Sheboygan County, work closely with Suzanne, but don't offer any services directly in Kalkaska.
All right, thanks, Molly. Megan.
Hi, I'm Megan Sorensen with District Health Department number 10. I'm a public health educator and I work with Prescription for Health program in Kalkaska. I do tobacco cessation and I also work with the diabetes prevention program.
Great, thank you for being here. Jonathan?
Morning, everybody. My name is Jonathan, a recovery coach in 7 different counties in Northwest Michigan. Kalkaska is one of them. I primarily work in a jail-based program funded by the SOAR grant through Catholic Human Services. And basically the program works by getting a clinician connected to folks who are in the Kalkaska County Jail, and through that relationship, if the client would like and request coaching services, I get the referral from the jail, and that's how I get paired up with folks in Kalkaska.
All right, thank you. Look forward to working with you. Lynn.
Hi, I'm Lynn Benfield, and I am the new Regional Coordinator for Families Against Narcotics, Grand Traverse. And I'm just here to try to support Suzanne and some of the other members of the FAN board and the FAN advisory board. I'm trying to get to know the different things that they all do. And so I'm going to try to attend as often as possible so I could be helpful and supportive to Suzanne and her mission.
Thank you, Lynn. So, and before I introduce our guest, my name is Suzanne Prentice, and I'm the coordinator for the Live Well Kalkaska Coalition. And I am also the Kalkaska's prevention specialist, taking Lisa's place, which is a sad thing for me. Love the job, miss working with Lisa. So now I'd like to introduce Sharon Vreeland. She has a bunch of hats that she wears, but she is the coordinator for the Substance Free Coalition in Northwest Michigan and the 45th Parallel Resilience Network trained Michigan ACEs Initiative Community Champion and Prevention Specialist contracted with Catholic Human Services. So I'm going to hand it over to Sharon as we talk about ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences.
Well, good morning, and thank you for the introduction. A couple of other things that I do, just in case anybody happens to care, is that I also coordinate the HSCBs for Leelanau and Grand Traverse. And I am a high school bowling coach. I'm the head bowling coach for Traverse City Central's program. And, you know, honestly, all of these different things tie together every day for me. So I do have a dreaded PowerPoint presentation for you today. And I'm going to try something new with it that I've never tried before too, which is that you can have it automatically do subtitles. And I'm all about, oh, it says that the host has disabled screen sharing. Tisk tisk. But yeah, I'm all about accessibility and inclusivity. So we'll see what humorous things can come out of having it automatically generate subtitles on the fly. Oh, look, it's going to work now. Let's see. Share. Eek. Nope, stop share. I don't know what you're seeing, but that wasn't what it was supposed to be. All right, let's see. Oh. Share screen. Share. Does everybody see a happy first slide?
Yes.
Yay! Okay. So I wanted to start by just asking, how many of you are already familiar with ACEs? How many of you have had some training? Yeah, I figured this was probably going to be a preaching to the choir kind of room. So that doesn't make me any extra nervous at all. But I'm glad now that we're live streaming, because maybe we'll get a few of the people out there who don't know a lot about ACEs, and this will whet their appetite a little bit. So my goal for today is actually to provide a little appetizer, a little teaser, make everybody want to participate in the trainings, the community trainings that Suzanne and I are going to design. So I'm not going to give away all the goodies. Let's see. I need to move that. There we go. Now I can see that. Fabulous. So ACEs are common. ACEs are interrelated. They are directly correlated to neurological, biological, psychological, and social health issues. The information about ACEs that we're going to talk about all come from the findings of the Adverse Childhood Experiences study that was conducted in the early 1990s. It is the largest study of its kind, including over 17,000 participants, and was developed and co-sponsored by Kaiser Permanente in San Diego and the CDC. So Dr. Vincent Felitti worked at Kaiser Permanente, and back in the 80s, he worked with obesity patients. And they were finding, that not that many of their patients were succeeding with their weight loss, or even if they were succeeding with their weight loss, they were dropping out of the program. And they kind of wondered why. So they did a survey, and they accidentally included a question that they did not intend to include. But they ended up finding that a significant number of their patients had experienced childhood abuse. And in talking to those people more, they discovered that many of them were consciously or unconsciously using obesity as a protective cover. If nobody notices me, if I'm not desirable, the abuse is going to stop, kind of a thing. So this research that he did came to the attention of the CDC, and the two doctors ended up working together, and the field of ACEs exploded from there. The basic concept is that health begins where we live, work, eat, sleep, learn, and play. And where would we be without a definition of ACEs, right? So that's a lot of words for a slide, but basically they are ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, potentially traumatic events that occur between the ages of 0 and 17. And they can include witnessing or experiencing violence, abuse, or neglect, having family members die, or a variety of ways. They might be in jail, they might, other things. But it disrupts a child's sense of safety, stability, and bonding, and can lead to a variety of chronic health problems and a significantly shortened lifespan. And I highlighted the words substance abuse problems in adulthood because that's what this coalition is all about, right? So everybody's life is a little different, but to oversimplify, let's just imagine the path of two children in the world. And the top child inhabits a world that is mean and dangerous, and the bottom child inhabits a world that is safe and kind. And being in those different environments affects the way that their brain architecture develops. It affects the behavior traits that they develop. And the more that people are under stress, the more that those stress chemicals constantly produced in your body can produce changes to bodies that tend to prepare people for life in a dangerous world rather than life in a benign, happy world. And they actually change the way that the brain is physically shaped. So people who are following that top path are more likely to experience ongoing high levels of stress hormones, which are toxic, make it harder for the brain to develop a healthy neural network. And the people who follow the bottom path are more likely to have a brain and brain wiring and chemistry that are focused, flexible, and relationship oriented. Hang on to that word relationship, it's important. So just looking at real briefly, this is part of the whole message. There's 4 key components of the ACE message, and one of them is the neural part of the picture. So at birth, you're born and you've got a fairly low number of synapses. And by the time you reach elementary school age, all the experiences that you've had and you're learning and you're growing and your brain has developed through what they call arborization, a very large network, more than it's actually going to need as an adult. And then as we reach puberty, pruning occurs. They do actually call it pruning, and the number of synapses are cut back again. And so which ones are going to be retained, right? The ones that are used, the ones that are fed. What's that meme that goes around? Which wolf is going to win inside you, the good wolf or the bad wolf? And it's the one you feed. That is exactly the situation here. And so what happens is if somebody has had that rough path in life and they are adapted to survive on that rough path in life, and then they're expected to operate in a different environment, which is probably benign to middle of the road. You know, when biology collides with social expectations, we run into trouble. You know, you may be adapted to survive the situation you're in, but that adaptation may not work real well in the situations that you need to face to be successful in the world. Particularly if you take somebody who's from that traumatic world and you try to put them in a situation that requires patience, sharing, cooperation, resolving things with words instead of with a physical fight. If they need to go to school and sit still and share and cooperate, they're not really prepared or trained for that. And the other, the flip side of that is you take somebody from the calm world and maybe put them into a chaotic environment like a riot. Maybe they're supposed to do some riot control. Unless they've been trained to handle those specific skills, they're not going to be successful in that environment either. I actually, think this also it plays a little into what goes on with soldiers with PTSD, sorry, said that backwards. PTSD, because you have people who have been trained to operate a certain way in a dangerous, life-threatening environment day after day, and then they come home to a very different environment and they're adapted to survive a different way. And it's stressful as heck and really hard to readapt. Plus they've seen some pretty harsh stuff. So here's kind of a challenging pyramid, pretty colors, but kind of a challenging pyramid. But the building of things, it's like a pyramid. So you start with historical trauma and intergenerational adversity. People who, we all were brought up a certain way, and to us that feels normal. And we're likely, if that's the only thing we know, the only model we know, when it's our turn to bring up somebody else, that's the pattern that we're probably going to follow. Historical trauma, there we're talking about things like slavery or unequal rights. We're talking about what's happened with the Native Americans and the schools that the whole generation was sent to. There is actually a study that used the families of Holocaust survivors that demonstrated a lot about how trauma is not just something that stops with an individual, but it is actually mentally and physically carried forward into future generations as an adaptation. So those challenges can lead to adverse childhood experiences, which lead to social, emotional, and cognitive function issues, which lead to risky behaviors and health problems, and which ultimately can culminate in an earlier death than would normally be expected. So ACEs are common. Almost 2/3 of adults surveyed have consistently reported at least one ACE, and it's very common that people have more than one ACE because they are very interrelated. So there's a kind of a typical ACEs quiz that people can take to determine their ACE score. It covers 10 different adverse childhood experiences that can be categorized into 3 pots: household dysfunction, neglect, and abuse. And those percentages you see are the percentage of people taking the ACE test who reported experiencing those particular adverse events in their life. So you can see that those are pretty high numbers. So what does that mean if ACEs are common? So there's a dose response relationship. The analogy is the more gas you put in your car, the farther you can drive. But in this case, the higher dose of ACEs that you have, the higher percentage or experience of health problems you're going to have. And you can see that that goes up pretty straight line from 0 ACEs to 5 or more ACEs. You know, by the time you get to 5+ ACEs, 55% of people are going to experience some significant health problems. So let's take a look at a couple of specific health problems, and quite a few have been studied, but I tried to pick the charts that I had available that had some of the substance abuse things related to them. Early smoking initiation, that would be defined for these purposes as somebody who started smoking before the age of 12. If you have an ACE score of 0 or 1, it's going to be under 5%. But if you get to an ACE score of 4 or more, about 12–13% of the people who started early have got that high ACE score. You look at current smokers and those numbers go up even a bit more. HIV risk, I actually mostly wanted to see, you know, the one for people who have ever injected drugs. Those numbers are a little lower, but still you can see that they follow that curve, but you also see people engaging in risky relationship and sexual behavior that can lead to some other health problems. Alcoholism and marrying an alcoholic. So there's you can go from about 4% of people with a 0 ACE score all the way up to about 15% of people with an alcohol related problem, you know, had an alcoholic in their family. And then when you think about stacking those up, right? So you've got, you know, when you actually stack up that 15% and that 10% and that 5%, that's a significant number of total people with alcoholism, experiencing alcoholism, who have got ACEs in their past. And it also affects people, you know, their likelihood to marry somebody experiencing alcoholism. It may not be great, but it's what you know, right? It's what's comfortable. This is what you grew up with, and it kind of feels like home, for better or for worse. So there's that tendency to go for what you know. Same thing for abusive relationships. So population attributable risk, we've got an understanding that ACEs are common and have a strong cumulative impact on the risk of common health and social problems. And preventing ACEs and intergenerational transmission then begins to look like a really great opportunity to improve overall well-being of our populations. So this sort of oil slick chart here shows the percentage of various health and social problems that epidemiologists estimate are caused by ACEs. So for instance, if we look at marijuana use, they believe that 54.3% of people who use marijuana have ACEs, 32% alcohol, 36% tobacco use, 67% of people who die by suicide. And, you know, it's, you know, personally, I'm more on the altruistic end, but there's an economic cost to these things as well. I mean, not only to people who are experiencing housing insecurity, food insecurity, job insecurity, but you know, you've got 61.4% of people who miss 14 days of work have got an ACEs score, or have a disability that interrupts their day, 52%. That's a lot of people who are not able to be productive and pay their bills, and that's a lot of employers who are not getting work done. So in case I haven't hit you over the head enough on the importance of you know, how many ACEs somebody has experienced, here's another way to look at it. So here's what the graph might look like if somebody has one ACE in their history, and those bubbles, of course, are, you know, the numbers of people who are experiencing those particular problems. But then let's take it up to 4+ ACEs in their history. Those bubbles start getting a lot bigger, particularly alcoholism, drug use, depression, suicide attempts, cancer, heart disease, all kinds of things. 7 of the 10 leading causes of death have a correlation to high ACE scores, and a child with an ACE score of 4 or more is 32 times more likely to have issues at school. I know one of the things that we all often talk about is you have a kid who goes to school and acts out. Well, that might, you know, home might be a dangerous place for them, and school might be the safer place for them to, you know, to act out and to try to get their needs met. So if you get punished at school for that, instead of somebody reaching out to you and seeing, you know, yes, you have to learn how to behave in a social setting, and punishment may not be the answer to help people with that. And then 3-time higher risk of heart disease and lung cancer, and a 20-year difference in life expectancy. So once again, turning back to the economics, how much does it cost us for the life of a person due to, you know, who's experienced ACEs? You've got $3.9 billion to house them in the criminal justice system. You've got $4.4 billion to have them run through the child welfare system. You've got $4.6 billion to special education, healthcare, and productivity loss. So the cost to all of us is huge, not just the personal cost, but the cost to everybody in society. So having ACEs is not necessarily the end. Different people, you know, 2 people can have the same ACE score and have very different paths through life. And the difference is the core protective systems. So there are 3 key protective systems, which is developing individual capability, developing a sense of attachment and belonging with caring and competent people, and protective community, faith, and cultural processes. So again, people do best when living in a thriving family and a thriving community. The single biggest counter to ACEs is the impact of a single, competent, caring adult. And you know, even if we didn't know this from the research, let's think about, I'm a big one, right? Jokes or memes, I mean, they're always based in reality, right? And what's one of the questions that we often ask people? It's, you know, looking back, who was the teacher or the coach or the, you know, insert name of adult here that had the biggest impact on you as a kid, and why? And you look back at all the people who say, you know, Coach X really believed in me, or Teacher Y held me to a really high academic standard and showed me that I could do it. So like I said earlier, Suzanne, you know, just keep being there for them. Keep being that one competent, caring adult. And at some point when circumstances are right, he's going to be better positioned to find his way to recovery. Frustrating, but it's going to take a long time. So all of this is great, but so what? What are we going to do about it? So the good news is that Suzanne has applied for and received a Prevention Network mini grant, and some of those funds are going to be used to provide ACEs training in the Kalkaska community. And she has indicated that she would like to target inmates, parents, professionals who work with children, law enforcement, and the general public. So there is so much information that we have to share about ACEs, and some of it is kind of very general and warm and fuzzy, which I've leaned a little more towards today, and some of it is very highly technical. You know, if we were to meet with a bunch of doctors, I can give them neuroscience and epigenetics all day long. That's the great thing about these, is that we can target our presentations to our audiences to figure out what's going to be the most impactful thing that they can relate to and need to hear without making them glaze over. And really the end goal is that once people are aware of the science and aware of the importance of understanding ACEs and resilience, that's going to lead to the development and implementation of trauma-informed policies and programs and positive community interactions. We are looking to change the community. And so, yep, there are 4 components that we can mix and match as we are creating these presentations. The acronym is NEAR, so neuroscience, right? You know, how ACEs affect development and function of the brain and nervous system. Epigenetics, which is the study of how your behaviors and environment actually change the way your genes work. It doesn't change your genetic makeup, but I guess in my head, when I picture it, I think of my genes having little off-on switches, you know, and at some point, some oog in my past decided that there ought to be an on switch on the gene that says, if you see a bear, you might want to run, you know, and the stuff that happens to us can actually change where the position of that toggle switch is. Adverse childhood experiences, of course, what are the actual things that cause problems, and then resilience. That's really the key, is how can we build the protective factors? You know, we not only want to try to reduce the incidence of ACEs, but how do we build the resilience in people so that if they experience an adverse childhood experience, they are going to have a better outcome than they might otherwise. And you always have to end with the warm fuzzy slide, right? About how it's us. We have, you know, as a community, we have the ability to do this work, to build this common understanding, and reduce, or maybe, I don't know, the fantasy would be to eliminate the ACEs, right? But to eliminate the high ACE scores in our community and thereby reduce the substance abuse, reduce poverty, reduce all kind, you know, problems in school, you name it. This is one of those root cause things that can have a big impact. Thus endeth what Sharon has to say on the subject today. How'd I do, people? Be brutal.
That was awesome. That was awesome. Thanks so much. It really definitely explained it in a nutshell, in a short nutshell, but a nutshell. So we have had some people jump online.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
I might have texted my mommy. So one of them, if you're out there, hi, Mom.
All right.
Yeah, she likes to follow my exploits. She watches my kids bowl, and I texted Mary Grumman, who is a local licensed professional counselor, and she, if there's anybody who is a passionate ACEs advocate, it's Mary. So if you're watching, Mary, hi. If not, you'll catch up with it later. And I should say Suzanne is also a trained community champion. So
it's been a little while, but
it's been a little while. So yeah.
Definitely turned on a switch in me. It made sense. It made a lot of sense. So yeah, it was really, really good. So now, let's see. Lisa had to leave. So does anybody have any further questions? Let's open up the floor for questions.
What are you doing as far as trainings?
You're muted, Sharon.
Phooey. So actually, Suzanne and I are going to meet next week to start planning. And anybody who would like to be in on this planning, I say bring it on. We especially would like some people who are members of our target or a target audience to be part of the planning process, or certainly I would. I told Suzanne that, so far she hasn't complained. But yeah, some of the sessions will be probably shorter, like the ones for parents. Might be just an hour or two. But when we get to some of the presentations for professionals, maybe they're going to be a half day or a day when we get a little more deep into the science.
Yeah, and the public, when we bring it to the public in general, I'd like to bring in the resilience film, and then on top of that, you know, provide something not as what am I
Talky.
not as deep as with the professionals, but you know, our goal is to create a more understanding and empathetic community, especially when it comes to substance use disorder, and to realize that we have a lot of children in our system right now who have parents who have substance use disorders and have gone through a lot of trauma, and to help support them and the families, and just try to make some positive changes. So.
And I think, you know, to me, I think when I hear people express pushback about ACEs, the biggest thing I tend to hear is, you know, well, we don't want to give people a free pass. We don't want to excuse them, right? And I think, you know, finding that sweet spot between, you know, like I said before, it's not, you know, yeah, sometimes there have to be consequences, but for instance, does putting somebody in jail simply because they've been using a substance, does that make sense? Does that help? No. Are we going to be able to change that one in the short term? No. But we can maybe make some progress, and at the very least, maybe we can make some progress in how people are treated when they are incarcerated and they have a substance use problem. And actually, you know, if you don't know the real problem, you know, punishment is not necessarily the solution to the problem. It's not going to fix anything. So what are we going to do to fix it? While still holding people accountable where necessary.
Right, for sure. I mean, I think about so many people that have gone to prison, to the prison system, and you think about the traumas that they had suffered, whether it be bullying or abuse. And so we're actually placing these people into a system that causes more trauma and abuse, because it is not a good place to be. And they come out more angry and with more issues.
And then if they're parents, their children now have an ACE score because they have an incarcerated parent.
Exactly.
So, I mean, we are helping to promote that intergenerational trauma.
Right. I'd like to get some questions from everybody. Can you think of something?
I was just thinking about, while you guys were all talking about that, is like, you know, our future generation, they're going to have a lot of parents who have passed away from overdoses. This isn't going to get any easier either, because the numbers are just going up, and, you know, it's a younger generation, but they still have little ones out there, you know.
Right.
It's just, that's hard. For all the family members involved, you know, especially the children who don't know what's going on.
Right. That's why my hope is that, like I said, we can create a community that's more understanding and empathetic, and get people within the community that can step beside some people that are struggling with a substance use disorder. And, you know, that support can change the outcome of a person. When you have someone that's struggling with this, and you've got, you know, people in place around them to, you know, as a protective factor, I think it can make a big difference. And if we can help them walk through the process, it can make a big difference for their kids, you know, to help people to become better parents. So.
I didn't have a question. I guess it was more just a comment. Just thinking about Sharon, you talked about how you know, we're having punitive measures against people, and a significant portion of them have very high ACEs scores, and I think it speaks to the need for preventative services, not only before, you know, at a very young age, for young parents, for people with young children, to just provide people with the tools and resources to try to minimize, prevent some of these incidents and traumas from happening, but also then once the trauma has occurred, what type of resources are available to help the family and the children, so that we can minimize what's happening as they get older. I know you may have said what I'm about to say, so I apologize, I'm just repeating it. But I know on one of the early slides, you talked about how we know that trauma actually can physically change your brain and the makeup of it. And there's research that shows that, and it kind of explains why sometimes people with high ACEs scores experience trauma repeatedly, because their brain has been changed and altered that they don't recognize danger or a traumatic situation coming. So they literally don't have the ability to say, this isn't safe. I need to find a way out. And even when it does happen, sometimes they still don't realize what just occurred wasn't safe, because their brain doesn't allow them to process the same way a brain that hasn't experienced a trauma has.
Yep, they've been so exposed to danger that it's basically just another Tuesday, right? Yeah.
So I think I have all your emails, because I have a copy of the slides, and I'll send them out to everybody that showed up. And probably send it to the coalition as well.
I also sent to, along with the slides, I got some updated stats for 2019 through the state of Michigan for ACEs in adults and youth in Michigan and the impacts. So there are some very dense information sheets, but I think you'll find them interesting.
That's awesome. So anybody else have any questions? What do you think about our plan? About, does anybody
Who
have
wants to play along?
right?
I plan on going to one of the trainings. I think it's a great idea.
Awesome. Would you like to be involved in the planning?
It can be.
Okay. Well, I will send you the link to our meeting.
Okay.
You can show up.
Yeah, sounds good. If I can be there, I'll be there.
Right. Yep.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I'm happy to be involved with the planning too, if you would like other people involved. I think that's something that just kind of always comes to my mind throughout these conversations is how do we get this information out there, and how do we help people understand the importance of it? And I'm just wondering, I mean, that's why I'm so glad that we're doing this right now, but I'm wondering if kind of almost like some brainstorm sessions would be helpful, and just, you know, what has worked in the past when it comes to, you know, what kind of hooks people into seeing the importance of this information, and what is the best way to then get the information in the hands of the people where it's most needed, because it's definitely extremely powerful. And I feel like it's like the key, the kind of the missing piece to a lot of the work that we do in the field of addiction and prevention. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, it's kind of exciting. Someone said to me last week that it could definitely be a model for other communities. We'll see how this goes.
For sure.
I'm excited.
So last week, I think it was Friday, I went out to Manistee with Pam Lynch, and she did a presentation, only part of it, on what you went over today. But, you know, and then she, you know, talked about other stuff, but she did it in front of like law enforcement and the city, towns, and commissioners and all that. So that was really awesome too. So she's kind of out there doing the same thing. And I'd never really, I've seen ACEs, but I've never like done my own, and I'm kind of scared to do it. But I mean, I'm kind of interested to do mine and my son's, because I was just saying to my mom actually today, like my son has no idea what it's like to have like a father in his life, like ever. Like the only person he hears from is me, and he doesn't really know any different. You know what I'm saying? So I would like to get like, you know, ACEs done on like me and my son, definitely. But
You can go online and find the questions. You just ask, what is it under, like ACEs survey or questions or something like
Yeah.
that.
You
That's
can
awesome.
find them. There's always a lot of debate about, you know, do you want to give people the ACE test, you know, at one of these types of meetings? Usually the answer is no, because, you know, for some people it can be like a aha, you know, there's nothing wrong with me, you know, right? It's not what's wrong with you, it's what's happened to you.
Right.
You know, for some people it can come as a big relief, but for some people it can open a door to stuff that they've been suppressing, or it could be, without counselors available to support people, that could be, a really scary road to go down. So I say definitely do it, Kim. Just, prepare in advance in case it opens a floodgate.
I
This
took
on a
mine.
bad day.
Yeah,
I took mine. I wasn't surprised. So
Yeah.
I had I mean, I had probably, I don't know, kind of average, but I wasn't surprised at it. So
and some people feel comfortable sharing theirs and some people don't. But you won't be surprised to find out that a lot of the people in the kinds of work that many of us do might have higher scores.
right. Right. I think that's why we can do what we do.
Yeah. Well, kids who've had cancer want to be doctors. It's we want to stop the cycle. So actually mine is fairly low. I call myself a 2.5 or a 3. I've been very fortunate, I think, but still.
Yeah. And I mean, and sometimes, like I've heard from talking to like my son, he compares himself to other people. He's like, why do I have this issue when so-and-so went through so much worse? And I think it depends on how you process your trauma. I mean, It may not seem like much to other people, but it could be absolutely horrendous to that particular person. It can
Resilience. Yeah. Well, and isn't that what we do, right? We try to say, oh, well, I should feel, I should not feel so bad because everybody has it so much worse. Well, no, we all have it bad. It's not a competition. It's not pie. We shouldn't minimize what's happened to us. Just because we know somebody else is struggling even more. We shouldn't be a drama queen either, but
right. Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sharon, but I had heard it said, because somebody said to me before that their spouse went through a lot of trauma and they didn't develop some of these things, and in fact they went into law enforcement. And I heard it said that especially if you have like an older sibling, if there's abuse in the family, and that older sibling chooses to put themselves out in front to protect the other children, that's actually a resilience thing. And they're more likely to become, someone like an officer or going into the military, or because they've actually chosen to put themselves in that situation.
Yeah, when I worked for Children Protective Services, I attended a child death investigation training with Michigan State Police in the post in Lansing. And one of the speakers was a detective and stated, we know that everybody in here is here for a reason. And it's because of whether it was a trauma that happened to you or somebody you cared about, it somehow in fact affected you and has placed you in this role today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One of my favorite law enforcement officers ever, Matt McKinley, if anybody knows him. I got to know him when he was a community policing officer for Acme Township, and we both worked there. And he told me at one time, he said, when he was a teenager, late teens, he realized he was going to go one of two ways. It was either going to be very, very bad, or it was going to be better. And so, yeah, he went into law enforcement, and he has been a community resource officer at the schools, using his background for good to help steer kids down a different path. And then to what you were saying, a few years ago, there's a lady named Irene. Now, why am I not going to think of her last name? She lives down in Detroit, fabulous human being. She is a survivor of the Holocaust, and we brought her up here. Actually, she wrote a book, and we brought her up here to do speaking engagements for several local high schools, we being the trauma group, and with support from the local synagogue. And she and her sister did not end up in a concentration camp. They ended up in Siberia. And she was the younger sister. Her other sister was older. And Irene has gone on to have a pretty much happy, successful life. She never talked about her experiences until after her daughter, I believe, was killed in a car crash. And her daughter, she'd never talked with her daughter about her experiences. And then she realized this is something people need to hear. And not only, just because it was a Holocaust experience, but a survival experience. But she was the younger, and everybody did what they could to shelter her given the situations. And her older sister, had to bear the brunt of taking care of her when they were separated from their parents and when their parents died. And their life trajectories have been very different. Very different. So right there, the same set of experiences, but a different perspective and a different role and a different resilience.
Right, right. And you see that quite often in families where, the kids go through the same traumas, and one will end up going one way and the other will end up going the other way.
Yeah.
So let's see, let's check the time here. All right, we are at 11:58, so we're almost to our time limit. Anybody else have anything else they'd like to ask or say, or? No? All right.
Great presentation. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the invitation, Suzanne. I really appreciate it. It was,
Yeah, no problem.
like you said, stuff I already knew, but it's always nice to see the experts, put it out there. So, no, Sharon, you did a great job. Thank you. I really appreciate you taking your time to share this. Thank you.
All
I
right,
appreciate the invitation.
we are going to stop streaming on Facebook. So bye everybody on Facebook Live, and I hope you enjoyed the Zoom meeting.